Hello and welcome to another Writing with Design session. Today we're going to take a look at 3 different strategies for how we can work at the sentence level to improve our writing. And by working at the sentence level, it makes writing a lot less daunting for students because the sentence is manageable. It's just a few words long. It's not a ton of paragraphs or a whole lot to remember in our heads. And so it makes the writing work so much more enjoyable. And when we learn it at the sentence level, when we learn these strategies and can incorporate them and use them with just one sentence, then it opens and invites us to doing them at the paragraph and the whole essay level. So let's dive in. The first one we're going to take a look at is called Sentence Scramble. And this is something that's fantastic for both inside the classroom and at home. And it's where you take a sentence and you literally cut the words apart. We call it paper surgery anytime we're cutting words apart or reworking even in an essay level. If we have to cut things out to rearrange it, we just call it paper surgery, and it makes it a whole lot less intimidating and a lot more fun. So here's an example of some words. We've got lights, bright, trucks, have, fire. And what we want to start to have students do is to think about, how can I tell which word is the first and how can I tell which word is the end? Because there are clues based on what else might be in the box for them. So we always know a sentence begins with a capital letter. Yes, so we know our first word is going to be fire. And then can we figure out from there what the other words might be? Or can we figure out what the last word might be? We definitely know it's going to be lights. Why? Because there's a period next to it. Yeah, so that's really helpful to kind of anchor the beginning and the end. And then we want to see from there, fire what? Oh, fire trucks have bright lights. And then we're going to take the actual pieces and move them and put them in order. So it's a kinesthetic activity. So you want to have sentences, you can just handwrite them and cut them apart and then give them to your children and mix them up and then let them put them in order. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, and any kind of sentence will do. It can be about what you've had for dinner. It can be about if you're hoping for a change in the weather. It can be about an upcoming holiday or a past celebration that you've had. Anything and everything can be the topic of these sentences. And the goal is just that they're scrambled and can they figure out the order that they go in. For upper grade students, you could lengthen the sentence and also take away the scaffolds of the capital and the period, right? So if you take a look at this one, we don't have the help of a capital or a period to figure out what's first and what's last. So we've got buses, took, home, school, kids, yesterday. It almost makes sense in that order. It's a little bit of a strange sentence structure, but we can start to play around with school, buses, took kids home yesterday. That's one way. And so then we're going to work on capitalizing school, putting all of the words in order. And then when we get to the last word, we're going to add in our period. Is there another way? Absolutely. So maybe we say yesterday, school buses took kids home. And again, practice capitalizing the word that we want to have at the beginning of the sentence. And so what you're seeing here is that we are working on not only sentence formation, what makes sense, which is a big part of the revision process for writing. We're wanting students, as they read their writing, to say, that doesn't flow, that doesn't make sense, that doesn't go there, and kind of restructure, reorganize, both at the word level, at the phrase, at the sentence, and ultimately at the paragraph level within essays. So this is taking that and just making it more of like a drill, akin to what happens in sports practices, right? We don't practice a sport by playing game after game after game. We narrow it down to a specific skill for which there are drills, and students practice or players practice the drill again and again and again until it's muscle memory. And then they're able to pull that into their writing. So we've got this fantastic second version of the sentence from here. And so you're seeing here even a few different versions. So school buses took kids home yesterday. Yesterday, school buses took kids home. That's the first one we saw. And then we might flip the entire structure of the sentence to kids took school buses home yesterday. Yesterday, and that kids should not be capitalized. Kids took school buses home. So caught a blooper in that second, or that very loud bottom sentence there. And we're missing a period. We've got a couple bloopers. So we'll have to get this fixed. But now you know, and you can fix them when you work on this, or be aware of them when you're working on this with your children. So let's get a little bit longer, a little more complicated. I'll give you a hint. It starts with erosion for this sentence, but see if you can figure out how it all goes together. Erosion and wind, ice, through, landscapes, water, even, transforms. What does erosion do? What's a verb that we can have it do? Erosion transforms through ice, wind, and water. Landscapes? Erosion transforms landscapes, okay. Through, can you figure out the rest now? Wind, water, and even ice. All right, so here it is popping up. Got our capital, got our period, we got our commas for the commas in the series. And just to show you another sentence structure as an option. And so what I like to think about with this is that they're like the Legos 3-in-1 sets, right? You can buy one set of Legos and you can create 3 different types of vehicles or 3 different dinosaurs. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We're saying you've got all the same pieces, all the same words, but how can you structure your sentence? Is there more than one way? And for students to get to see that and start to think about how this particular sentence will fit within their writing. Does it flow? Do I like the top version? Do I like the bottom version better in terms of the other sentences? It just helps them develop what we call the writer's ear. So that's sentence scramble. It's one that you can do very easily. You can create sentences on a weekly basis for your children to work on. They can start to make some for you to do, and it can just become a really fun family tradition of working on writing high quality sentences. It's really nice to get in the grammar standards too, if you want to get really technical and work on compound sentences or compound complex sentences, or talk about dependent clauses. There's a whole lot of grammar that you can pull into that if you want to get into the technical pieces, or you can just keep it at the does it make sense level and let our children just play around with putting the words in order, and then talk about why one order works and the other one doesn't, or if there's more options that they could consider. So along the same line of sentence scramble, we're going to take a look at combining and rearranging phrases now to create impressive sentences. And this is akin to like a puzzle. How do we want to put these pieces together to create the puzzle that is this particular sentence? So we've got 3 different pieces, so to speak, and we're going to fit them together to create something that we think is the strongest and the clearest sentence. So this is, again, something that we're just, your family can create together. Each of you could create one and bring it to a time that you're all working on this together. But we're going to all start with a very short sentence, like I saw a squirrel and a chipmunk. Okay, and then we can ask what we call our extender questions, and you'll see several of them within the slides here, so you'll have lots of them to pull from. But the first 2 are when and where. When did we see that squirrel and chipmunk? Well, it was in the afternoon. And where? Well, outside in the park. And so now we've got these 3 phrases. You could use what we did with the sentence scramble and have these 3 phrases now on little strips of paper and work on, oops, I didn't mean to do that, work on arranging them. I thought there would be a version that popped up, but what you can do over in that orange box is to think about what version would flow really well, or what are all the different setups that would work for this. So we could say just down the line, I saw a squirrel and a chipmunk in the afternoon outside in the park. Or I can start at the bottom and go up. Outside in the park in the afternoon, I saw a squirrel and a chipmunk. Or I could sandwich that short sentence between the when and where phrases. So I could say, in the afternoon, I saw a squirrel and a chipmunk outside in the park. Or outside in the park, I saw a squirrel and a chipmunk in the afternoon. So that's 4 different ways of coming up with the same information in terms of all the parts of the sentence, but just the 4 different structures that work well for this. So the goal is flexibility. The goal is trying it out different ways just to see what sounds good. And for different family members to say, hey, I really like this version and I really like this one. Fantastic. That's your writer's choice, your writer's voice. And we love when we start to have more of a preference with the way something sounds. So our next one is about our state bird. So we're going to take a look at our short sentence of scissortail flycatchers live. Yes, they do. But where do they live? All across Oklahoma. Why? Well, because that's their native habitat. That's where they live. So we want to then think about, again, the structure. How can these be mixed up? How can these be said in a different way to just give some neat sentence variants? So it might be something like scissortail flycatchers live all across Oklahoma because this is their native habitat. Or because this is their native habitat, all across Oklahoma, scissortail flycatchers live. Or can you think of one? Maybe start with the why phrase, then go short sentence, then go where. So because this is their native habitat, scissortail flycatchers live all across Oklahoma. Yeah, so keep practicing, keep exploring with sentences to get a lot of variety and variance. And so here's one more extender of why. So we've had when, where, and now why as 3 ways to expand our sentences. We've got one more here of how. So maps identify regions and borders because it's important to know geographic locations by using lines and colors. How do they do that? How do they help us identify regions and borders? Well, because they use lines and colors. So you can see in all the examples of the maps down below that, yeah, absolutely. It's very much the lines and colors that help us know these geographic locations. And so again, from there, we're going to rearrange and play with the order. Remember, you can have each of these phrases on strips of paper so your children and you can move them around and see what sounds good. And then practice them orally. That's one really important thing, is not just to lay them out on the desk or table, but to have your children say them out loud. Practice putting the strong sentences together fully from the very first word to the last word and articulate that orally. What we know about learning how to read, the research that has continued to come out about the importance of or the importance of oral language and learning how to read and recognize words, is that we have to articulate, we have to say information in order for us to comprehend it a lot of times. And so the more that we can practice words out loud, the more that we can hear great language, the more great language we will know. So encourage your children to write out loud. That's taking these, putting them into a sentence and saying it out loud, and for you to model it as well. So one more, the power of 3. This is one of my all-time favorite skill focus activities because there truly is a magic number. And when it comes to our eyes and our ears and our brains, 3 holds a very special place. It's called dynamic symmetry because we like our eyes and our ears really like odd numbers. They like 3s and 5s and 7s much more than 2s and 4s and 6s, right? So there's a couple 3s right in that sentence there. And so this is a really nice way of making sentences sound succinct, rhythmic, and memorable. There was another power of 3. So as you think about incredible orators, right, it could be politicians, it can be preachers, it could be family members, but when people speak in ways that draw us in, a lot of times you'll be able to find the power of 3 in the way that they've phrased their sentences and their paragraphs. In art, right? If we take a look at the very famous Starry Night painting, if we divide it into thirds, we see that there's this really neat kind of heaviness in one area, and then it's unbalanced, but somehow it's balanced because of the unbalanced, the 1s and the 3s and the 5s and all of those kind of the odd pieces all come together to make that painting something that really draws us in. And the same kind of thing with architecture. So whether it's 3 different tiers, or it's kind of just the way that the building kind of lays out in this dynamic symmetry model, then it is pleasing to our eyes. Here's just a few more. So life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Be brave, be bold, be you. And then as you look at advertisements, both in the visual form and in terms of their logos, you really can see a whole lot of power of 3s, right? Domino's even has 3 as the total of the domino. And plus you've got 3 different sections, right? You've got the section with the 2, the section with the 1, and then the big blue section, the Adidas symbol with the way that the lines are growing. And then the McDonald's, if you think about dividing that by that grid for like a tic-tac-toe board, you can see how it kind of aligns with heaviness in some areas and lighter parts in others. And again, kind of the power of 3. So what makes it powerful? What do we need to do to make a power of 3 work in writing? Well, we want all 3 words, phrases, or sentences to be about the same length and have the same similar structure. So they all begin with an adjective, they all maintain the same verb tense. This is really important, that we don't want to switch from past to present tense, for example, with verbs within a power of 3 or a series of 3. You want to make sure that it stays with what we call parallel structure. The second big tidbit is most of the time we want the longest word or phrase to be at the end of the series. So we don't, if you think about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it's not the pursuit of happiness, life, and liberty. That sounds a little off. And the reason it sounds off is we want the longer one, our eyes and our ears want the longer one at the end. And lastly, there's a rhythm to it. And that's really important to develop that write out loud skill, to have to practice these out loud. Have your students, your children say these phrases out loud, and you can rearrange them to get that best rhythm. Okay. And then definitely as a bonus, if you do alliteration where it starts with the same sound, that is just a really fun way of adding in some alliteration. So, or adding in a little extra flair to it. So I'm thinking of a McDonald's ad that's not in this presentation, but just it's easy to hear the alliteration in it. It has pictures of 3 burgers, and at the top it says Big Beefy Bliss, right? There's a power of 3. Big beefy bliss, 3 words, and then they all start with the B sound. So that's that alliteration and exemplified. So let's try this out. Besides cats and dogs, the animal shelter has blank, blank, and even blank. So we've got pictures here to support what we're looking for with this particular sentence. And it takes just a moment to do a brainstorming design, which is our go-to design to always get our brains thinking about what could we put into our writing. And so you see we've got lizards, pigs, and rabbits just listed, but maybe you call your animal shelter and see if they have any strange animals right now or in the past, or you just research online, what are some stranger animals that animal shelters have taken in? And then from there, we can just add them in. So besides cats and dogs, the animal shelter has rabbits, lizards, and even pigs. So that's just at the word level of getting that power of 3 going. We can try this, blank, blank, blank puddles make for a memorable afternoon outside. So how could we describe these puddles? We've got 3 great pictures here of very excited kids jumping in puddles, and we can think about adjectives to describe them. So I'm definitely seeing muddy and deep, or fresh, right? So let's see what comes up. Deep, splashy. Oh yeah, splashy puddles for sure. Muddy puddles. Maybe they're cool puddles in terms of the temperature. So you can brainstorm more, but again, taking the topic of the sentence of puddles, the subject of the sentence, and then let's brainstorm what are some adjectives that could go around it to help us better picture these puddles, and then put it into the power of 3. So something like deep, splashy, muddy puddles make for a memorable afternoon outside. All right, what about our pizza one? What do we have in the pictures here? Well, we've got spicy pepperoni, we've got gooey cheese, we've got crispy crust. Oops, but you could certainly add in for the others of the crunchy green peppers, the salty ham, anything else that you all like. And what I love about this is that it's an adjective noun combo. And that's where the power of three gets even more power, is when it's starting to be more like phrases instead of just single words. So we could say something like, pizza is best with spicy pepperoni, gooey cheese, and a crispy crust. So think about what you're having for dinner tonight. Think of 3 different descriptive pieces that could go into really making that meal vivid, and add that into a sentence with the power of 3. I also encourage schools to do this when you're thinking about announcing what's for lunch that day. See about adding in adjectives in front of the nouns and coming up with a power of 3 to describe one lunch option versus another. It just gives students a chance to hear it and to practice it if they're the ones, and I hope they are, making the announcements. What about blueberries? They're picked when they are blank, blank, and blank. When do we pick blueberries? Based on these pictures, if we haven't ever picked blueberries in real life, well, we can think that through when they're sweet and juicy and plump, right? And maybe cobalt blue, right? We can add in a color word. We can describe them in other ways as well. And so from here is one more example. Blueberries are only picked when they are sweet, plump, and juicy. Our lake one. So these are all ones that you can pop up for your family. You can take each of these and kind of walk through these slides very slowly, pause the video and just show the options, or put this up and then make a brainstorming design on a sheet of paper so that your family is the one coming up with the adjectives. You're not just pulling from the examples that we have, but you all are thinking about, how could we describe the lake? Look at how stunning the lake is, and what are some adjectives and phrases that are coming to mind. So here we've got 3. Notice some alliteration going on here with clear, cool, and calm. And so we can put that in here. Oops, sorry, I went too fast on that one. The lake was cool, calm, and clear all day long. All right, our doggies, dogs blank, blank, and blank. We've got 3 pictures to show 3 different things that doggies do. They dig, they devour, they drool, more alliteration, and then we can add more in. So notice even from the brainstorm to this, we're adding more in. They dig huge holes, they drool on clothes, and devour their dinners. This one can certainly be fun. So I'll show you the options that we have here. But again, we're giving you all these for you to really create with your family, and use this if you all are stuck or you want some more ideas. But we don't just want you to pull from R3 every single time. We want you to start to, as a family, talk through what are some options, and then just use this as a model to help clarify or to give you some guidance. But we're not looking for your sentences to turn out exactly like ours. That's the beauty of writing, is that as a family, you all get to figure out what phrases, what sentence structure really fits and captures what you want to about these particular pictures, or change this out to, over winter vacation, what did you do? And having talking about what you did in your home, or if you did go somewhere, this is a wonderful way to kind of pull in a personal experience. So please take these and make them your own. You do not have to have yours look exactly like ours. So to wrap up, we've talked about 3 different strategies. You've looked at the sentence scramble. You've looked at the combining and rearranging phrases, and then also now the power of 3, to really have 3 different strategies. So notice my power of 3 right there, but 3 different strategies to be able to work on your students' writings at the sentence level. And so while you might notice a lot of things that you want to improve, or your children are wanting to become better and better writers, it's important to tackle one thing at a time. And so by looking at sentence structure through these 3 activities, you will begin to work on improving that particular area of writing. One last piece on this, especially for our younger writers, please don't make spelling the focus. Spelling is important, but it is the least important out of all of the criteria of writing. So we care way more about spelling phonetically, just getting the ideas down so that it's legible, that somebody can read it and figure it out. And focus more on the quality of the ideas than really honing or harping on spelling's not perfect, spelling's not correct, this is not how you spell that word. That doesn't build the confidence in our youngest writers. And we really want them to trust themselves and realize that they do know how to write, and that spelling is just one little part of that. So yes, we do eventually want to have spelling that is accurate, but at the same time, please don't make that the focus. It's something that will come as your children grow as writers and have more experience with language, and just learn all of the rules of the English language. So thank you all so much for tuning in and trying out these activities. We always love to hear from families and see how writing is going. If we can answer any questions, please reach out, and please just continue to make writing fun and enjoyable and relevant in your lives. Take care.